Good afternoon, everyone. Just one thing at the top. Nice. Does it sound like the voice of God? I don't know about that. I don't think people would say that. Okay, we'll try this again. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Today we learned that last year, 19 states achieved their lowest average unemployment rate on record. 23 states sent new record low unemployment rate last year, and 32 states had an unemployment rate below 4% for the entire year. We created a total of 2.7 million jobs last year for a historic 14.3 million jobs created under President Biden. All while wages are rising and inflation is falling. And we've continued lowering costs for families from healthcare and prescription drugs to utility bills. This is the heart of President Biden's strategy to grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up. Now we're seeing consumer sentiment rise as more Americans feel the results of President Biden's economic plan. And with that, I said I was going to be real short. I am. Admiral John Kirby is here to give an update on the Middle East.
I think as you saw yesterday, the militaries of the United States and United Kingdom, with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, all conducted an additional round of strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. These self-defense strikes targeted missile systems and launchers, unmanned aerial and surface vessels, storage facilities, fighter aircraft, helicopters, and attack boats, all with the goal of further degrading the Houthis' ability to conduct further attacks on ships in the Red Sea. Initial reports from the Pentagon indicate that all the targets were hit and that they will help further degrade Houthi offensive capabilities. That said, the Pentagon is still conducting a battle damage assessment, so I'd refer you to them for any additional detail. I just want to remind that the United States is acting as part of a coalition of countries committed to the defense of our ships and our sailors, to upholding the freedom of navigation in a major international waterway, and of course to holding the Houthis accountable. And as the President has made clear, we will not hesitate to take further action as appropriate.
Thanks, John. On the strike yesterday, can you walk us through a little bit of when the President approved those strikes? Was there a new convening of his national security team before that operation, or was that sort of the green lit a couple weeks ago when these strikes started?
These additional strikes yesterday required additional conversations and discussions across the national security team, and the President made the decision to authorize this particular round of strikes very recently.
And with that national security team, did that include Secretary Austin? When was the last time the President spoke with the Secretary?
Those discussions did include Secretary Austin. I don't have the exact time on the calendar when those discussions happened, but he was involved and engaged in all those discussions, yeah.
And then on a different topic, there's a report that the Israelis have presented a new ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire for a hostage deal, about a 2-month pause to release all the hostages and the buys of their civilians and soldiers. Can you confirm that? Is the U.S. engaged, as Brett's in the region right now, is he trying to actively sort of drum up support for that framework of a deal?
Yeah, I'm not able to confirm those specific reports that you're talking about in the press. Brett is in the region. He was in Cairo today, as a matter of fact, and he'll have other stops along the way. Certainly one of the things he's in the region talking about is the potential for another hostage deal, which would require a humanitarian pause of some length to get that done. And that's definitely on the agenda. He'll also be talking about a range of other issues, including humanitarian assistance, including getting assessment of Israeli Defense Force operations and protection of civilian life. I mean, there's a lot on his agenda. But I can't confirm these reports that those are the parameters of a deal that's being discussed. The last thing I'll leave you with is that, as I've said before, the discussions are sober and serious. Again, I don't want to get ahead of where we are or give you, I can't give you odds on if and when we'll be able to get there, but the conversations are very sober and serious about trying to get another hostage deal in place.
Can you characterize, just where the holdup is? I mean, this seems to be a far more significant offer on the part of the Israelis. I mean, you've seen from them in public messaging. Is Hamas the real holdup here?
I don't know that. It's time now to be talking about holdups. I mean, these are these are ongoing discussions. I wouldn't even classify them as negotiations quite at this point, but ongoing discussions with counterparts about what's in the realm of the possible here to get these hostages out, and how long would that last, the pause itself, and what would that mean for humanitarian aid. There's a lot of components here, and so I wouldn't describe it as us running up against some kind of obstacle here, or a stop, or a hard spot. We're just having these active conversations, and hopefully they'll bear fruit.
Do you think that a pause of a really extended nature, whether it's 2 months or it's weeks, very different than what we saw in the earlier release of hostages, would that not only serve to be a pathway for hostages to come out, but also to change the overall nature of the fight and transition to a different character of or intensity of the conflict?
You know, Kelly, it's possible, but I really think we've got to be careful about getting ahead of where we are in the process. The focus would rightly be on getting the hostages out, more than 100 that we know Hamas or their affiliates are still holding, and of course increasing the humanitarian assistance. It would depend on how long, right? And so I think it's possible that it could have some larger implications for the conflict itself, but it's just too soon to know right now.
And do you think that the substantial loss of life among the IDF, the 24, is that a component of changing how Israel may view where we are in the war now, to have a catastrophic incident like that?
Only the Israelis could answer that question. It was a terrible day for the IDF yesterday. That's an enormous amount of troops lost in one day, and certainly our condolences go out to all the families and their teammates as well. But as for what impact yesterday's actions might have on this, I think that's something we would refer to them to speak to.
Thanks, Karine. John, you've said multiple times that the U.S. doesn't support a general ceasefire right now. But would the White House support a 30-day, a 60-day, or a 90-day ceasefire if that's something that Israel was open to for a hostage?
Sure,
deal?
absolutely. If that would give us the opportunity to get hostages out and get more aid in, we would absolutely support a humanitarian pause of a longer length than the week that we were able to accomplish. Absolutely, we would.
And do you think that's realistic, that a 90-day pause, for example, might be agreed?
Again, I don't want to get ahead of where we are in the discussions, Jeff. So I can't confirm the reports out there about what the length might be. But we are in serious discussions about trying to get another pause in place.
And just lastly, on Brett's trip, can you give us a sense of who else he plans to meet with and what his message is during this visit?
He's working on a range of issues, so his messages are really in line with our policy, which is making sure Israel knows it has the support that it needs, making sure we're getting humanitarian assistance increased to the degree we can, getting the hostages out, and obviously helping to work towards an arrangement where a pause can be in place to allow all those things to occur. He'll also, no question, have other discussions about other regional issues, including continuing to explore the idea of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I don't have a readout of all his discussions that he's had. He's only just gotten in the region, I think, yesterday. So we'll see if we can get you a little bit more granularity on where he's going next and who he's going to be talking to.
Thanks, Karine. There were Russian strikes on residential neighborhoods in Kyiv and Kharkiv. What does this say about Russia's strategy right now?
It's very much, I think, of a piece of what the Russians have been trying to do since the winter months have set in, which is to further victimize the Ukrainian population, to try to break their will and their back. And the attacks on civilian infrastructure, residential homes, and areas is again not something that Putin has shied away from in the past. We don't see a lot of movement on the battlefront. From east to south. There's neither side's really making a lot of progress, and we're not seeing any major push by the Russians to some sort of ground offensive. And I'm not ruling out that they might not try to pursue that when the ground gets a little harder. But what they are doing are trying to overwhelm Ukrainian air defense systems. And those air defense systems have been pretty effective at knocking a lot of this stuff out of the sky. Things get through, obviously. They don't have everything. But that's why it's so critical that we get this supplemental funding. Because as I said earlier, the Ukrainians are making some tough decisions on the battlefield about what they're going to shoot and what they're going to save for another day. And the Russians know that. So part of this is trying to break the back of the Ukrainian people, but also trying to force the Ukrainians to continue to use munitions in defense of themselves.